Welcome to The Thin Line, the podcast for first responders and veterans. We are so glad that you are here and excited that you could join us. The Thin Line podcast is rated explicit and viewer-listener discretion is advised. The views expressed on The Thin Line are unique to the speaker's personal experiences and circumstances and do not reflect the views of any specific broadcast media or platform or any specific agency.
Hey guys, good evening and welcome to The Thin Line. I am your host with the most, Messy Jessy, and I'm here with two very special guests. I have the most honor of having Mr. David Tovar here back on with me. He's filling in for Colleen. She's on special assignment today.
So technically co-host.
Oh, right. You are my co-host.
There we go.
Listen, I told you guys it was not going to go smoothly. I'm and I'm here with one of my special friends, and he actually does a lot for the community and for law enforcement. I have Mr. Greg Austin on here as a special guest. Welcome aboard.
Awesome. Welcome aboard.
I appreciate the opportunity. So this is awesome.
Well, thank you. The honor is mine. Thank you. So we are going to be talking about a few things that's very special to first responders. And we're talking about the Fraternal Order of Police, right? Fraternal Order of Police. Did I say it right? I always do the other way around. Sometimes I always do FPO, and I'm like, no, that's not right. How dare I?
Yep. That's right. Yeah, Fraternal Order of Police.
All right. And so, yeah, I guess I'll just let, Greg, you go ahead and just kick it off and talk about like your experiences and all that.
But before you start, would you mind filling us in who don't know what the Fraternal Order of Police actually is or does?
So the Fraternal Order of Police is a national organization of police officers that was started in the state of Pennsylvania over, I believe, 110 years ago now. Two patrol officers were tired of the way that they were being treated by their employers, and they thought that they needed to get together and create an organization where they could have a voice and stand up and be able to voice their frustrations. They were able to work up a deal with the city of Pennsylvania, or of Pittsburgh, I guess I should say, not the city of Pennsylvania, but and we're able to improve the work conditions there for themselves and for their fellow employees. And since then, it's broadened out into so much more and is the ultimate voice of law enforcement. And it is truly a bottom-up organization. A lot of other organizations, we love our chiefs and our sheriffs, but they are ran by the administration. This one is truly ran by the people that are out on the street that are enforcing the laws. And so we have a voice not only in the labor side, but also in legislation and anything that has to do with law enforcement, including mental wellness.
Oh, wow. Is that who started pushing the new mental illness awareness with law enforcement? Because correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean to butt in, but from what I've noticed lately is a lot of law enforcement are focusing more on the mental illness aspect.
Yes. I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago, the National Fraternal Order of Police started a wellness committee. And that was one of their big pushes, is that they noticed that there was a lot of other organizations that were trying to get wellness and PTSI programs put together, but there was a lot of different ones and they were going a lot of different directions. And so they decided to start working on one that would be a nationwide model. And as a matter of fact, I went through the course myself last month. It's called Power and Peers. They were able to get a grant from the Department of, now I'm going to forget what it is. The Department of Justice gave them a grant, and they're pushing out this program nationwide, and to help out not only make it okay for you to talk about what you went through, but to educate the people about what you need to be asking your peers about this. So,
very good, very good.
Wow.
I know back when I was in law enforcement as a CO, there was no mental health awareness back then or anything like that. But yeah, but thank God that they brought that up, because I'm sure that improves the longevity of every officer out there.
Nope, absolutely. And I was fortunate enough to get in the tail end of my career. It started becoming more and more acceptable to talk about your mental wellness and to seek help.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, which is super important. So yeah, what is your, just a little bit of your career background?
So I did 27 years in law enforcement. So I started as a dispatcher with the county in 1995. I did dispatching for 3 years, did police, fire, ambulance. During that same time, I put myself through the academy at the local college, got my certificate, was a reserve officer for the local city during that time until I was able to get a full-time patrol position in 1998. And so from 1998 till 2022, I was a full-time patrol officer, did patrol corporal. I was a instructor in DUI and went through DRE training. I was a school resource officer and a what was it? Oh, Marine deputy. So I did boating enforcement and stuff too. So I did a little bit of everything while I was in there. And then my last 3 years before I retired, I actually moved up to City Hall. I took a different job inside the city, and that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about is where my career went and how I ended up where I did. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. And you don't look a day older either. Just saying.
I'll show you, my picture from when I started. I look like I was 12. I don't think I have it on here. I have it in the other room. That was always the running joke when I started was every call I went to, they're like, how old do you have to be this job? You look like you're 12. Here I am, 30 years later, and I definitely don't look like I'm 12 anymore. But
there's a few of deputies that I see that are very young. They look like about that age.
Yeah, I've been fortunate that I helped hire the new city officers, so I know all of them. But I don't know, I don't think one of the new county deputies. So it's very interesting going down the road now. So, and just a couple of years ago, everybody was family, and I knew everybody, and I knew their wives, I knew their kids, and I don't even think most of these kids are even married yet. They're so young. So
yeah. And I like how you said family, because that's pretty much what we all are. Is we are family. And speaking of the FOP, what is some of the community involvements that they do?
Well, we try to do a little bit of everything. Always kind of my thing is that most organizations out there are going out and asking for donations and asking for people to give stuff to them. And always my philosophy is, well, what are we giving back to the community? And obviously, as police officers and first responders, we're giving to the community. But I also like to see, if we do other activities out in the community, some of our guys are out coaching football teams, out doing trash pickup days, just trying to do a little bit of stuff so that we have that positive contact out in the community. One of the best ones, and it's not directly related to the FOP, but one of the local things that we get to do is our Santa's Helpers each year, where we get to go out and take a kid in need and take them out shopping and give them Christmas presents and their family Christmas presents. That's always been the highlight of my year, to be able to go out and take these kids that were usually going out and dealing with their parents on a negative situation. We get to deal with them on a positive situation and take them out and let them see that we're human too. So we're just, trying to
having a positive impact on these kids and showing them that side of law enforcement, showing them, the human side, the loving side, the caring side is so important for our youth nowadays.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's important. And the kids, they need that positive reinforcement in their life, because all I know is an officer's coming to talk to my dad because he was naughty, and now they're like, I'm riding in the car. I think that's the best part. It's watching these kids ride in the car when you guys are taking them to the store, because it's priceless, the look on their face and the smiles. And that has to be good for the LA in that position, taking these kids, they're like, this is like the highlight of my day, I mean.
Is there, Greg, have you ever noticed the difference between a child who has positive involvement with law enforcement, say a child of a law enforcement officer, in comparison to children who have not been exposed to the positive impact or the positive things that the officers are doing in the community? Can you tell the difference between those two children?
Yes, yeah. There's definitely a difference in there. I mean, I was just thinking, almost every interaction at Santa's Helpers is a kid coming up and saying, "You arrested my dad," and all they saw was a badge. It wasn't me that arrested their dad. I don't really know who they are. I may know the family and I may have interacted with them, but chances are it was another officer. And so all they see is a badge and not a person. And to be able to show them, a person, that these guys are individuals, that they're, somebody else may have been there that had a badge, but it wasn't this guy that was here. So kind of giving them a positive side to that badge too. So, and the personalization, I think, is the most important portion of it, is that everybody is an individual, just the same as I always compare it to hamburgers. Just because somebody over at Burger King burnt your burger one day, I'm not mad at the guy that's flipping burgers over at McDonald's, and I'm not upset at the next guy that's at the next Burger King either, because they're all individuals and they're all separate entities. So.
That's a great acronym.
Yeah, anyway, we won't talk about McDonald's. So, can you give us a really good story of what, you don't have to give names or anything, we don't want that, but inspirational story through your career that inspired you more? Because I know that some law enforcement officers get tired of all the negativity and everything, but what is one of your favorite inspirational stories?
I don't know, I'm trying to think of one in particular, but working in the schools was probably the best thing for me, and I think for any officer. I think any officer should spend time in the schools, not necessarily 20 years like I did, but to be able to see the positive side of life, and see kids that have had struggles, or families that have had struggles, and be able to help them through their hard times, and then see them come out on the other side, and being a productive citizen. I think a lot of it, my last year I spent at the alternate high school, and coincidentally, my first year as a school resource officer was at that same alternate school. And it was very interesting going into the alternate school, because you were dealing with a lot of the same people that you were dealing with out on the street. Well, the same families you were dealing with out on the street, and a little bit more negative background versus just in the general high school. And so there's a lot more face-to-face dealing with the students, and of course a lot smaller population too. And to be able to sit down with those students and be able to step them through the progress. I can remember a student coming in, and she was devastated because she just found out that she was pregnant, and her family, of course, had kind of, I don't know, maybe not disowned her, but kind of shunned her out of the whole entire progress. And, she could have very easily just completely dropped out of school and decided not to come back at all. And, I helped encourage her to come back. It also helped that the school had a nursery there. So after she had the child could come with her to school. And I remember, like, that first couple of years after her child was old enough to speak and was wandering down the hallway, I'd always go out in breaks and hand out, stickers or suckers to the kids or to the students. And I always remember one of them was this young little girl. She would come up and she'd always say, hi cop, you got a sticker? And that was always like the fun part of my day. Well, I didn't even like really think anything of it. She was a cute little kid, and I really liked interacting with her, and I liked interacting with her mom. And a handful of years later, I ended up over at the middle school, and lo and behold, the first year that I was there, here's this not so little girl. She was as tall as me now. She was in the 8th grade, and she comes up and she's just like, Officer Austin, do you know who I am? And I'm like, I think I do know who you are. And lo and behold, it was this little girl that used to come up and ask for suckers all the time. And so we still had that running joke, even though she was, 13, 14 years old, she'd always come up, hi cop, you got a sucker? And the crazy thing is now, before I retired, she was having her own kids, and her kids were coming through the school, not at the level that I was at yet, but I was just about to, like, I was getting to the kids of the kids, and I had one or two of their grandma was
Wow.
in school in that first year that I was there, and that was really crazy. But it was always like moments like that, especially the last couple of years of those relationships that I built 20 years ago, and being able to use that to my advantage, and to be able to connect with somebody a lot faster than just trying to sit down and have a conversation and let these people know that you're a real person. I'd already established that, and I'd be like, do you know so-and-so? Or I know your mom, and your mom went to school here before too. And that was always a really cool thing to be able to do. So.
Yeah. I think with all that.
Generational rapport.
Yes. Generational rapport. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to, with that, you probably used those situations to help, your brothers and sisters, in training or trying to deal with the situation. So that's awesome. Yeah. So what, and I know, but not if our listeners or watchers know, but what is the goal for, we're going to go back to the Fraternal Order of Police. What is the goal for law enforcement families? Like what help do they get through, if there's something they needed, like a tragic event, God forbid. But how does FOP step in
I mean, most of it is like support wise of being there and having that shoulder and being able to be the connection. Um, uh, the word that I think of the best that I've heard in the last couple of weeks is wraparound. Is we don't necessarily provide the service itself, but we
Right.
provide, connection to that service. Kind of like an experienced ear and being able to route them in the right direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that back in like a couple of years ago, I worked with you as part of the law enforcement auxiliary FOP, and I would happen to be one of the members. And I remember a lot of things that we did to help the community as well, but to really help the families of law enforcement officers, because if you really think about it, at the time there was really not a lot of support for how we deal with things. We do care about our officers, but what about the families? What about the kids?
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
times that they're going through. And so it's super important. And I'm happy that the auxiliary is still going, just because, we're just a bunch of old law enforcement west, just,
Yeah.
But we mean the best, and we always pitch in for everything. David, did you guys have something in reference to a particular like FOP when you were in
back in the Department of Corrections through California? It was the CCPOA, but it doesn't sound. It was our union basically.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have, or not that I was aware of, any support like Greg is talking about. We usually turn to the union when it hit the fan, or when we needed help with our lieutenants and whatnot, or our upper administration. But no, as far as I remember, I don't remember any kind of support like that. That would have been amazing. I could imagine the turnover rate would have been, cut way down in comparison to the way it was.
Yeah. Well, and then back then there wasn't a lot of, again, people not talking about what's going on mentally.
Yeah. I think the only kind of support that we gave each other was meeting for choir practice after work, and everybody.
I had never heard that until that my last training, somebody called it choir practice.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're like, oh, yeah.
Everybody gets together and everybody starts drinking, and that's usually our outlet. It was back then our outlet to get talking about the incidents that happened.
It's funny because a gal that I know was watching our show, and she's like, so they really go out and sing after your shift? And I'm like,
well, there's howling involved.
There could be.
And this is the culture. I mean, look at how between Greg and I, Greg is we were employed here in Idaho. Am I correct? And,
yes.
and mine was back in the 90s, back in California, yet we still use some of the same terminologies. It's a giant family kind of situation. Thank God it's evolved to where the family's actually taking care of each other now, mentally. Because
that's been one of the great things that I always talk about the FOP too, is I'm the national trustee for the state of Idaho, so I go to a lot of meetings all around the country, and I meet officers from all over the United States and actually all over the world. We have some organizations that come to some of our other meetings, and one thing that I've always said is a cop is a cop is a cop, and it's very interesting, coming from Podunk, Idaho, and going to a meeting with some guy from NYPD, and he talks the same language. He talks, the about the same issues. He talks about the same calls, and I mean, all the way down to like the mannerism, how somebody sits or how somebody stands by the door and so forth. A cop is a cop, and
When
it
they
doesn't
go to the
matter
restaurant and they
where you're from. So
Mhm.
put their back
Yeah.
to the wall whenever they go to the restaurant. They always have their line of sight set. And
yes,
There was a couple of times when my Leo would sit not. Yeah, I'm like, are you feeling okay? Because the door's right there, and it's you okay? So yeah,
I think it becomes second nature after a while. There are still
Yes.
some mannerisms that are just I have never been able to shake, and that's one of them is putting your back to the wall, making sure you got your exits covered, and yeah.
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that I've because of my PTSD and stuff, and me trying to pull myself out of being turned on to that fight or flight all the time, that I try not to do. But yeah, there's some of them that'll never go away. I'm constantly scanning, and I can't stop scanning. I try to fight the urge to sit with my back away from the door, just so that I can, try to unlearn some of that. But that, yeah, you're definitely not going to unlearn all of that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. I
Yeah, it's
agree.
kind of like you're not ready to trust that. And I don't think you ever will if you really think about it. You may be for a little bit, but then eventually you'll move. You're like, I gotta trade you. I can't do this. Can't have my back
Yep.
to the wall, or the door. So it's crazy. But yeah. So who all can join the FOP? Is it just law enforcement? Is that correct?
So any full-time law enforcement officer, anyone that has arrest powers, can join as a regular member. But we do have memberships, like you said, with the auxiliary, which is adult family members. We also have, now I'm going to lose the name, the anyone that's employed in law enforcement can be in I think it's the auxiliary. And anyways, there's another portion for the civilian side of it too. So like even a non-full-time, say a reserve officer, a dispatcher, we have the chief secretary, we have the evidence tech, anyone that's involved in law enforcement in one way or the other can be a member. It's just of which division. So there's the three different divisions within it. But just as a regular member, yeah, you have to be a full-time law enforcement officer with arrest powers to be a full member. So
Yeah. We don't have any police unions here in our area. I think, aren't they mostly back in the east?
now we have 5 that are unions in the state of Idaho. Pocatello is
Okay.
is the closest one to us. Pocatello, Boise, Napa. I'm trying to remember the rest of them. Lewiston, and I believe I think it's not Lemhi. Well, one of the other ones there with Lewiston area. But yeah, it is a right to work state, so that does make it a little bit of a challenge. But if they were given the right to bargain by their city or by their county, then they can bargain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I was just curious because I was like, I haven't heard union around here. I just heard the FOP. And so I'm just wondering if they both have the same, wants and goals for everybody.
Yeah, I would say we still have the same wants and goals, and we're still a voice for our officers, and we do make our opinion known. If that's something that we want or that we dislike, you probably have seen. There's been a couple articles out in the last week or so from the Idaho Falls Fraternal Order of Police on their dislike of a decision that one of the judges have made. So that we still have our say that way, and legislatively, we have a lot of say out in Boise. We have our own people there on the Hill that we let our opinion be known. We've ran several bills and so forth. So just, the union is a great tool of the FOP, and it's just one of the many tools. But I'd say that's probably one of the other sides of the FOP that people think of the most, is the union side of it. And unfortunately, in Idaho, we don't get to use that quite as much. So
yeah.
But definitely back east, it's huge.
Oh, yeah.
It's ingrained, and that's the other thing that's very interesting. Going to national meetings is meeting third, fourth generation officers. That their dad, their grandpa, their great grandfather were police officers, and out here in Idaho, I know a couple of guys that their kids are officers now. But other than that, I'd never heard of that before. So very interesting.
That's crazy. Yeah, and it's amazing how that is. And also, I keep thinking how time flies.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Most of these officers' kids weren't even born when I started with their mom and dad, in the 90s, and they're born, raised, and they're officers themselves now. So that's definitely the crazy part of it.
You're like, where did I go?
It definitely puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You recognize the last name on the uniform, and you're like, you're so and so's kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what is some of the legislation things you guys are dealing with or trying to get completed this year, at least?
So the legislative year just wrapped up here in the end of March. And this year we weren't really pushing anything. We were supporting a couple of bills, or against a couple of bills, like for license plates, front license plates, and license plate readers. Just simple things like that this year. But in the past, we have ran the temporary disability bill for law enforcement. So if you're injured in the line of duty, you don't have to just take what workman's comp gives you, because workman's comp only gives you, I believe it's 65.5% of your pay when you're off on workman's comp. I was very fortunate. I worked for an agency that they had always said, if you got injured doing a job for us, we're going to pay you at 100%. And we just signed our workman's comp check over. But not every agency has that luxury. And what this bill did was it built up a fund actually within the workman's comp fund at the state level of that the officer or the agency can apply to that and get that other percentage so that you're together as a whole if you're injured in the line of duty, whether it's slipping in the parking lot or heaven forbid if you're shot on duty or something, that they're gonna make you whole. The other big one that we did in 2018 was the PTSI bill. We were able to get it recognized in the state of Idaho under workman's comp. And that's been a huge jump for the state of Idaho and for first responders, because we ran that with the firefighters, and we were very successful on that to get that through. So it is kind of crazy. I was just looking at another state's Facebook the other day, and they just barely got a PTSI recognized this year, and I'm like, we got ours done in Idaho 7 years ago. So that's pretty crazy that some of these states still don't recognize PTSD, PTSI. So those are some of the big ones. I mean, there's several other ones that we've supported, or that we've backed, or that we've tried to go through. But to me, those are some of the biggest ones that I know of that we've ran it on the state level.
So you guys are ahead of the curve by leaps and bounds. That's awesome.
Yep. And even at the national level, that's the other thing that we've really gotten into this year is we were able to help out with the Windfall Elimination Act this year on the national level. And even though we're not union and we do pay into Social Security, the Social Security Fairness Act, which was enacted over 40 years ago, took away almost 60% of Social Security from some of those agencies that didn't pay into Social Security, but they may have paid prior to becoming a firefighter or a teacher, and they couldn't get their Social Security because they had a pension. And the thought was back in the 80s, well, you have this government pension, you're already making all this money off of the government. We're going to take 60% of your Social Security and not give it to you, and which was a huge farce. So the national FOP was able to run that along with several other unions, but the two biggest ones were the PFFI and the FOP ran that, and we were able to do that successfully this year and get that overturned. So
that is amazing. That is amazing. I know back in the 90s, I was affected by the exact same thing. And yeah, it was not overturned back then, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So that benefited a lot of people, not only police officers and firefighters, but teachers and other unions that went through. Somebody was telling me a story of his mom was a bus driver for a school district for several years, and she was making a pittance after she retired. She had to go back to work because of it, and it made a huge difference. It like tripled her income after that was overturned this last year. So it's been absolutely amazing, not only for us, but for other government retirees. So.
Oh, that's really
amazing.
cool.
You guys are doing great work. That is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much information, but I had a couple more questions. What, this is kind of off the topic. What is your stance? I mean, we got a little bit of your stance on mental health and how important it is for law enforcement officers. What would you say to, the family? I always call it the family, about their mental health, and and what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, that was kind of like the great thing about when I left law enforcement in December of 2022. I left because my mind couldn't take it anymore. And I actually checked myself into a PTSD rehab down in Draper, Utah, called Deer Hollow. And it was about one of those things where, compound PTSD is definitely a huge thing. But when I came back, I knew I wasn't going to come back into law enforcement. I knew that was in my past, but I knew that I wanted to do something about it. I knew I wanted to be the voice out there to tell people that it's okay. And I think sometimes I might be a little too over the top, and I'm okay with that. But I like to let everybody know, hey, how are you doing today? Is there anything that I can do for you? And that this is where I have been. If there's ever anything that you need, get a hold of me. And when I left law enforcement, I was privileged enough to be offered a job by my mayor to move up to City Hall and become the human resources director for the city. And I actually hired all of our first responders. I hired the firefighters. I hired the police officers. I hired the other departments too, but specifically the first responders. I would sit down and have that candid conversation with them, that this is who I am. This is why I'm where I'm at. This is where I've been. And I don't want you to be in that same position. I want you to have this information of how you take care of yourself mentally and how you can do this job successfully and be able to walk out at the end of it, not necessarily unscathed, but be able to deal with it a lot better than I dealt with it on my way out. So
that is amazing. That is amazing. Using your experience and what you've been through to help others. That is the epitome of, that is the whole thing of mental health is saying that I've been there and I can help you not go through what I went through. And that's pretty much the exact same stance that I take through the agency that I started with recovery and behavioral health. So my hat's off to you, Greg. That is amazing.
yeah, and I'm besides the FOP, I'm in the FOP. I'm on the National Wellness Committee. I'm also with a couple different local organizations, including Courageous Survival, which is a wraparound program here in Idaho that we not only take care of first responders, but we take care of our veterans too. And I fall in both categories. So it's great to be able to come from the perspective of I've been there, I've done that, I've made the mistakes. Let me help you not make that mistake and be able to step up and point them in the right directions. This is what you need to do. And again, it's not one of these, I can't tell you how to do it for you, because everybody's different. Everything happens or works for everybody a different way. And some people have to be led to the water differently. I can point you in the direction of the water, but it's up to you to go and take a drink. And you may not like the water over there, but you may like it on the other side of the field. But I'm going to show you where each one of those are. So
very good. That is awesome. And honestly, my opinion is this is why change is so prevalent now, because we do have people like Greg in the field that have gone through it and that are helping other people and are in positions where they can be the voice to make change happen. So, my hat's off to you, and I hope that you continue in this, because that is some amazing change. I only wish that we had services like that back in the 90s, and yeah, that would have made a world of difference for a lot of the officers that I knew.
But I do know that that's one of the big things with the FOP now is that we're pushing into corrections. We've always been in corrections, just as just kind of off into the background, and we've always concentrated on our road troops and taking care of the road troops. But there has been a collective action of actually stepping up. We do have a corrections committee now, and that's one of the big things that they're pushing to is the mental wellness side of it. So
that is awesome. That is good to hear.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so happy to be part of the family that I'm part of, and all the support and love that all the our officers and families get, because it's very important. And so and what advice would you give yourself? You haven't answered that yet. Like if you were to go back in time, if you were to go back in time and say, all right, Greg, you
I don't know, and I really didn't talk about it, but I had the double whammy. I'm a Marine, like your husband, and I'm a cop, and I got in. I'm not quite the old school like 70s, 80s cop, but I was still in the generation of you just need to rub some dirt on it and take care of it yourself and come back tomorrow and deal with it. And on top of that, as a Marine, until you're given permission, you're not allowed to have an issue. You're not allowed to die. You're not allowed to have PTSD because, the captain didn't give you permission to do that. So you just need to rub some dirt on it. And I really don't know, if I could go back to the 90s with this mentality, I honestly think I would be pushed out of, of the organization. But I do think that there's things that I could have done a lot better myself of taking care of myself finding different avenues to self-care and being able to deal with these situations.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important to have a family that stands behind you. And, that's one thing that's been talked about is, we have to have those willing family members that have to try to understand what you guys deal with on a daily basis. There's nothing you can do or say to make it better, but when they're ready to talk, just be there to listen. That's pretty much down to the wires. Just listen.
Yep, absolutely.
At least me, anyway. So yeah, it's just super important. Mental health is important, and I'm going to keep pushing that through the whole entire show and shows in the future, because I think that's what we need, is better mental health for any first responder and military, because it seems like they get pushed under the rug and like, oh, you guys are tough, and like you're what you said, let's just rub some dirt on it and we're just going to go on with our day. So
yep, absolutely.
Well, I think it does. Dave, do you have anything else that you want to talk about or ask?
I did have a question in as a hold on. Your first position that you had. You were what was your first position again? I wrote it down. I can't find it. I'm sorry.
So was it the school resource officer or?
Before that one.
Oh, dispatch.
As dispatch, do you have any memories on a call that you guided, or because I could imagine being a dispatcher, you're getting the wildest calls, raw and asking for help.
Well, that's the thing, and I still don't think that it fully recognized that dispatch is in such a unique circumstance that they're not only dealing with this situation that's going on, this active shooter thing. They're still taking calls in the background on other incidents, and even after they hang up the phone, they've got to move on to the next one. Whether it's my neighbor's dog is crapping on my lawn, or whatever it is, and so from that front, the officer has the luxury of, I guess if you call it a luxury, they only have to deal with what's in front of them and how terrible it is. They just have to deal with just that. But the dispatcher, they're still continuing to get piled up on, because the most of our agencies, there may be 3 or 4 dispatchers in the center, but you've still got to help out the rest of the community. You still have the rest of the county to think of, and no matter what it is, I mean, all the way down to, my water got shut off, and now what do I do? Type calls. So between that and then the deal with your imagination, all you're doing is you're hearing the call, and your imagination is taking over. And I remember the very first really bad call that I took as a reserve. I was a reserve out on the road, but the dispatchers that I worked for full time were the ones that were dispatching me, and it was a 5-year-old. Well, no, it was actually a 3-year-old that grandfather had accidentally backed up over him with a RV, and I got dispatched to the call. Located the grandpa, trying to take the child to the emergency room, forcing the car off of the road to get the child and start CPR on the child. And it was, as a brand new officer, that was very hard for me. And the fact that I had a 3-year-old child myself at the same time was really hard for me. But I was able to work through that over the next couple of days. I got to talking to the dispatcher that took the call a couple months later, and she was still trying to deal with it. And she just had this terrible picture in her mind of this just out of the world bloody scene. And it actually really it was terrible because the child ended up passing away, but it wasn't as bad of a scene as she had made up in her head.
Her mind on the phone.
Absolutely. And I can remember several calls in dispatch that I did the same exact thing. I had somebody commit suicide while I was on the phone with their wife, and I didn't realize at the time, but I heard a pop in the background. And I didn't realize until I hadn't even been to the dispatch academy yet, but at the dispatch academy, they talked about the slamming door sound, and what a gunshot sounds like over the phone. And I'm like, that's exactly what it was. It was that moment of that slamming door. That was the gunshot. But I remember in my head thinking about this horrible thing that had happened and so forth. And the officers come in, later that day or even, a week later, and they're just like, hey, it was a call, we'll move on. And I was still, I don't know, not fascinated by it, but it was still in the front of my mind of like, that was absolutely terrible, wasn't it? And they're like, it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how time goes too. I talk about this all the time. Like how when incidents like that, it's like you don't pay attention to time or how you're feeling or anything like that. You have to go and get it done. But then later, that's when, other people will soak that situation in. And it's like, how did I get through that without,
Yeah.
Or memory,
And time is a pretty crazy thing, looking at like my first very traumatic event, everything up to like 2009 was pretty okay. I can deal with this. I can move on. Yep. That was terrible. Let's move on. But when it physically became, an issue for me, and I actually got ran over by a car during a pursuit. I was throwing spikes during a pursuit. And my side of the story is he thought I looked softer than the spikes. That wasn't his story when we got to court, but he ended up hitting me. I was just lucky that he was only doing about 35 miles an hour when he hit me going over the car. And I can distinctly remember like the feeling of my left hand going on the hood, going over the car. I can still hear like the soda can crunkle as I roll over the hood of the car. And then as I went down the driver's side mirror hit my head. And then I went somersaulting down the road, away from the car, luckily. And he continued on running. And that one was something that I couldn't just overlook. I couldn't be like, oh, okay, yeah, it sucks to be that guy that committed suicide over there, and it sucks for his family. But that was his decision. Okay, let's go on to the next call. I'm okay with that. This was something that was very personal to me, and it was, like a personal attack to me, and something that I never ran my brain through. I never ran through that scenario at the academy. I never ran through that scenario in anything, and it was very, very different for me on that realm. So I think when it becomes very personal to you, when something happens to you physically, I think it has a lot more impact on your well-being after that, your mental status. So
yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you completely. I know my PTSD episodes, there's one in particular that is extremely personal where we endure all these things as military, as first responder, as paramedic, as law enforcement. We endure so many different things that we just set aside and we keep stuffing it down until we hit that one that pulls us out of our safe, for lack of better terms, our safe zone that we've created for ourselves, stuffing everything away, and it brings everything up to the forefront. And
I kind of compare it to my bulletproof vest. Is when I'm sitting behind my bulletproof vest, I'm not. You can't hurt me with this stuff that I'm seeing out there. Okay, And then when I take my vest off at night, I take all that stuff that I saw and I hang it up in the closet or wherever I set my vest at. But when it came to the point that my vest didn't protect me, then it makes you kind of you're questioning this thought of that you're not necessarily like a superhuman, but that you're exempt from feelings. And I can honestly say that between the Marine Corps and, you know, a new officer, I felt that I was pretty much bulletproof, and several occasions I don't know how I made through most of the stuff that I did. I was just very fortunate up to that point that I could do kind of what I wanted, and it didn't affect me. But I agree with you that stuff that I was hiding in my vest all come out too at the same time,
Yeah.
and then trying to deal with stuff after that, along with holding up hey, I'm doing okay
Yeah.
card, and hey,
Mhm.
yeah, you're doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good. And you turn around and you're like, shit, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Quietly to yourself, and you're just trying to. I don't know. I was always trying to put on a big facade that I was okay, and I thought I was helping other people by being strong through it and rubbing some dirt on it and getting up
Mhm.
and walking away and being able to continue doing my job. And that was it was definitely the biggest damage that I did to myself was living that lie of I'm okay, because I wasn't, and it took me I think another 13 years before I finally realized that. So
Yeah. Yeah. And how did your family handle those situations? Like, I mean, I'm sure it was probably super hard.
yeah, it definitely was, because I was definitely a recluse. I just didn't want to deal with it, and if feelings are bad, so don't show feelings.
Mhm.
And when you feel overwhelmed, go to your room and don't come out. Um,
Yeah.
after I went to Deer Hollow, I realized that I was very fortunate that I didn't go hide in a bottle somewhere, but I'd given up drinking, several years prior to, and honestly, it didn't even seem like something that I needed to do, but I was still hiding from my emotions. I wasn't dealing with it. And then if I did have emotions, it was towards my family negatively, and I can tell you, after talking to them, I was a pretty harmful person when it come to showing my emotions, because they were the only ones that got to see my emotions, and it was against them, not anything else that they had done.
Right.
But it was my way of expressing this energy somewhere and getting it off of my shoulders for a moment. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. And then trying to understand, being, obviously trying to understand situations and how to handle it. Again, it's like they don't know how to handle it. And I think that's a big, huge theme, that needs to be addressed and talked about. So, but yeah, oh
well,
my
and
gosh.
that's one of the great things about the auxiliary side of it, though, like you were talking earlier, of the spouses, not knowing how to deal with that. And when somebody acts out towards them, is it something that I did? And I'm sure that's the first thing that comes to their mind. But in the auxiliary, they get to meet the other spouses, and they get to tell their sides of the stories of, like, yes, this is how my spouse was when they would come home, and this is how I deal with it, or this is how we learned how to deal with it. This is how we worked through it.
Wow.
And this is a normal thing, but this is how you work yourself through it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm just thankful for all the support that both groups offer, because it's very important. And mental health is important. And I'm sure David probably could say the same, because you do a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, the divorce rate in law enforcement is back when I was a correction officer and a first responder. The divorce rate was phenomenal back then. Thank God they have auxiliary support now. That would have, that could have prevented a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is so refreshing to hear this. This is amazing stuff. I didn't know was out there. That is just awesome. What is going on now?
Yeah. So you guys, I think that's our show. I think we made it. I'm not sure.
Woohoo!
But yeah, so you guys stay tuned. We do have a new live show Thursday. We're going to have a special show. We're not sure, but it will be good. And then, of course, there's no Speaking of Spirits this week. So you guys, thank you so much for being a guest, Greg. It was amazing. I'm honored by everything that you've done in your life and you continue to do. It's very important as far as our family is concerned. So thank you very much. And that goes for you too, David. You do amazing work.
Yeah, it was extremely helpful. I never knew all the support that is out there. You are doing amazing work out there. Continue the great work and the support that is being given. That is,
No, and it's definitely my pleasure. And as far as we've come, in the last several years, we're still at the front of it. And so I still foresee that there's a lot greater things to be, had here in the next several years. So just, if anyone out there's looking for help, it is out there and it is acceptable to reach out and ask for help. And I just think that there's so many more other things for people, avenues to deal with PTSD and these feelings that you're having. So my advice is to definitely reach out to your friends, reach out to your peers, reach out to your family, and if you find yourself in that, that position, there's a lot of avenues through the now I'm trying to remember what the 800 number is, the suicide prevention line, and through the VA, through FOP.net, through the wellness, and through Courageous Survival. CourageousSurvival.com has a lot of really good resources, and they're doing really great things in the state of Idaho. And we're now reached out into the state of Oregon now for the eastern side of Oregon and working our way across. So
that's awesome. And thank you. And then I'll get that information from you, and I can post it on our information for somebody to look at.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And like I said, pleasure's mine, and I don't mind talking about it. And this was a great experience, my first time on a podcast. So thank you very much, Jessy, and David.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Jessy.
You're welcome. And thanks, guys. That's our show. We'll see you next time. Thanks.